Okay, well, I suppose I should begin by apologising to say that I'm not Albert. He will be here this evening, I'm sure, but I'm assisting him with bookings at the club now. My name's Adrian Jackson, and my great pleasure to have with me wonderful trumpet player all the way from New Jersey.
Teaneck, New Jersey, that's right. Yeah. That's correct.
Mr. Freddie Hendrix.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, Freddie, you're here with the Dizzy Gillespie Afro Cuban Experience, which I'm sure is going to be a very exciting band to hear this evening. Tell me, just where does Dizzy sit in your estimation, the late, great Dizzy Gillespie?
Well, he's one of the forefathers of the music. You know, everything doesn't start with him, but he's a big part of the core of the apple, so to say.
Yeah.
You know, he represented the future then, you know, back in the early 40s, you know, taking jazz music to yet another foreground. Of course, it was the music was famous from Louis Armstrong, which was my first influence in the music. But in those days, all the popular things of that time was the dance bands, of course, with, you know, Duke Ellington, Fletcher Henderson, Count Basie, Louis Armstrong, so forth and so on. Benny Goodman, all of the great bands, you know. So when Dizzy came around, him along with Thelonious Monk, Charlie Parker, you know, Bud Powell, Max Roach, Charles Mingus, these guys were the pioneers of the music. So he really kind of represented what was to come.
Yeah.
Or what is here now. If we never had a Dizzy Gillespie, I don't think we would be probably sitting here now.
Right. In my own case, as I just mentioned, all the way back in 1971, the first jazz concert I went to, I was fortunate enough to hear Dizzy Gillespie playing here in Melbourne with a group called the Giants of Jazz. And I didn't really know what jazz was, but that band made a big impression on me, and, you know, particularly Dizzy, like, he looked so distinctive, you know, the way his cheeks puffed out, and he had the upturned trumpet, of course. And while he was certainly playing very seriously, he didn't mind joking around and getting the audience involved, having some fun in between the songs. So, yeah, that really fascinated me, and I wanted to hear more.
Sure.
Yeah. And you were saying Dizzy, you know, really helped modernise jazz as it was back in the 1940s, along with Charlie Parker in particular. But as I understand it, he was perhaps more responsible than anyone else for the idea of fusing modern jazz of the day with Afro-Cuban music.
Yes. I believe at some point, I think he wanted to reach the people of the world. You know, he wanted to branch out more, wanted to connect with more people of the world. And he just became very fascinated with African rhythms and Latin rhythms. And he began to explore that, you know, traveling to places like Brazil, South America, Cuba. You know, he liked to say he loved everything south of the border, and that's what he meant by that.
Yeah.
You know, so he really began exploring these rhythms of these countries.
Yes. And I remember, I think it was 1988 that he toured here with the band he called the United Nations Orchestra, and it's up to the name with, as you say, musicians from, I think, Argentina, Brazil,
yes,
Panama, Costa Rica, Cuba,
yes,
Puerto Rico.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a real United Nations band, and he was really passionate about that idea of you know, taking jazz to and from every culture around the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, as a trumpeter, do you find it a challenge or an inspiration to be filling the great man's shoes with this band?
Yeah, both. It's a challenge and it's inspiring at the same time. You know, it's a challenge because Dizzy was so great that, you know, there was things that he was doing way back then that I still can't even do to this day.
Yeah.
So, but there are some devices and things that he's done that I've been able to adapt and grew up listening to as a young child, learning and studying the music. So yeah, I'm very honored to be here and playing this music of Dizzy.
And maybe if you can just tell us a little bit about the composition of this band. You know, in a sense, it's like a smaller version of the United Nations Orchestra, and you know, there are musicians from different generations and different backgrounds all playing
Absolutely.
together, and some very interesting young stars, I might say.
Yes, yes. So, well, maybe I should talk a little bit about the members of the band because, well, our fearless leader is John Lee, who unfortunately was not able to attend us with this trip because just due to some a back injury.
I should just mention on John, he was Dizzy's bass player of choice for many years.
Yes, I was just about to mention that.
20 odd years of Dizzy's career.
Absolutely.
And as I understand it, Dizzy's widow Lorraine approached John and asked him to keep Dizzy's legacy going with this and a couple of other bands.
This is correct.
Yeah.
And so that is what prompted John to put together this band. Yeah. You know, Dizzy was an inspiration to us all, but especially to John. And I mean, when you walk in his house, you feel the spirit of Dizzy. Yeah. Everywhere you go, every room every step you take in his house, you can feel Dizzy. And so that spirit is very alive and well with him, and it's also in this band. And so we briefly mentioned earlier in this conversation we're having that you know, Dizzy wanted to explore the musics of the world, but it's also very much like that with people. And so John is carrying on the tradition of Dizzy, which is a well-diverse band. You know, myself, of course, our alto player is from Oklahoma, so she has a Native American background as well as myself. Our pianist, Abuelita Mateus, she's from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Stepping in for us on the bass and filling in for John is Santi Cibriano, and he's originally from Panama. And then, of course, Tommy Campbell on drums, who also played with Dizzy for quite some time as well.
20 more years, maybe?
Yeah. Some maybe close to that, yes.
Yeah. And I just noticed, having a look at Cheryl Cassidy's website, the jazz critics from Downbeat have voted her the rising star on the alto saxophone in their critics poll for 9 consecutive years. Maybe they should put her just in the star category soon.
Yes, maybe they should.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to tire you out with too much talking before the show.
It's all right.
So I'll just thank you for your time and look forward to hearing this all-star band in action tonight.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you having us here.
My pleasure.
All right.